What's up, everybody? The UFC blessed us and decided to put together an incredible banger of a scrap for UFC 301's main event between Steve Erceg and Alexandre Pantoja. I'm kidding. Relax, everybody. All right, relax. But here we go. All right, so really, when we look at this matchup, first of all, I can't believe that this is a pay-per-view event, right? I just find it hard to believe that this was the best main event headliner the UFC could find. I understand that we just had UFC 300. I get it. We had 299 before that. We've had some good fights. But this is just, I don't understand how you can charge a pay-per-view for this. But nonetheless, this is the situation we're in. And when I sit back and think about this fight, guys, I think that there's two sides of the fence that you could be on. One, this is just a clear hit job, and the UFC is handing Alexandre Pantoja in front of the fans that are going to be there for him in Brazil. They're handing him just a guy that they just think he can steamroll in Steve Erceg, who they're going to market because he threw a nice left hook, was able to finish Schnell, and they're going to play that up and make it seem like, well, there was really no one else for him to fight, so we're just going to give him somebody, and it's almost like a sacrifice in front of the crowd, so that way Alexandre Pantoja can have a dominant victory and go in there and act like he did something and hold the belt up high and all those different things. Or the UFC looks at Pantoja and says, look, Alexandre's been in there with basically all the top guys that we have in the flyweight division. He's fought him God knows how many times. No one wants to see that shit anymore. We don't want to see Royval versus Pantoja. We certainly don't want to see Moreno versus Pantoja anymore. So, we've kind of exhausted these options where Pantoja has basically beaten everybody that kind of has a name inside the flyweight division that's exciting, that would even get anyone to remotely even slightly tune in to a flyweight fight. So I can't help but think, is it possible that the UFC sees something in Steve Erceg that could potentially possess some issues and pose problems for a guy like Pantoja? Now, I'm going to give my thoughts on this. We're going to break down and preview this matchup because, first of all, I want to point out that Steve Erceg has not lost, obviously, since he's been in the UFC, but he's riding an 11-fight win streak coming into this. This man has lost one time on the pro scene, and outside of that, he has not dealt with too much adversity, right? Steve Erceg has been undoubtedly, outside of that one fight, has been the hammer the majority of the time in his professional career. Now, can the UFC see that as, well, it's a confident guy coming in, he's got a nice knockout over Schnell, which of course we're going to see this highlight a million times. For God's sake, they put this fight on the YouTube, free on their YouTube channel as the fight to promote Erceg. They're doing all those things to play it up that Erceg is some sort of knockout artist. And I just want to point out, if you're not familiar with Steve, one, no, it's not Steve Carell from The Office, all right? It's not Steve. Maybe it is. We don't know. But at this point, Steve Erceg does have very good striking. He has very good boxing. His hands are clean. He has good combinations, good straight punches. If I was going to bring up a flyweight and say, you should probably model your striking after this guy in the technique of the punches, it's going to be Steve Erceg. The problem is, he's not known for knocking people out. A lot of it comes down to he rocks somebody, he hurts them, catches them in some sort of submission, and that's how Steve Erceg is winning his fights. He's not going in there landing left hooks, landing crazy overhand rights, knocking people out, starching people. I feel like people have a little bit of the wrong idea regarding Steve coming into this matchup with Alexandre Pantoja. Now, when we look at Pantoja, who I think is easily one of the most boring flyweights we've ever seen at the top of the division, but we have to give him his due. This man is a winner, and he's dangerous, and he finds a way to win no matter what. He is a gritty fighter that's got tremendous heart, and he does whatever it takes to win, which is partially the reason he's incredibly boring. But if you put that aside, if we put kind of the hatred aside, right, towards Pantoja and the flyweight division and how boring it's been, this man is a tough fight for anybody. He's a tough fight for anybody because while his striking is not the most crisp, it's not the most clean, it's chaotic. And what he does is he swings wild, you cover up, and as soon as you cover up to defend, he level changes. And he takes you down, holds you down, and makes it a dirty, grimy, boring type of a fight. And he does whatever it takes to win. If Pantoja comes into a fight and he knows that he has the better grappling, he's going to take you down. And he has no problem making it a boring, laying and praying type of fight for 5 rounds, which is why nobody's tuning in to watch Pantoja fight. But if you look at his resume, this guy has done some spectacular things inside the division, but I just can't help but think is this a hit job? Or does the UFC see something in the fact that, well, Steve Erceg has clean striking, maybe he can catch Pantoja with something, and if the fight does hit the floor, Steve Erceg is pretty scrambly. He's wiry, he's a hard guy to kind of control. We haven't seen it yet. And some concerns I have on the side of Erceg is this is going to be a 5-round title fight. This is a big spotlight. He really hasn't been in a position like this yet. So there's a lot of question marks coming into this. I mean, the number 10 ranked guy is getting a title shot. Have we ever seen this before? Feel free to comment below if we have, because I was doing a little research before this. I don't think we've ever seen something this crazy happen. Now, if it was going to happen in any division, the 2 divisions I would pick for this to happen in would be light heavyweight, because it's stale. There's a very good top of the division, but then it's very stale towards the back end of the rankings, much like the flyweight division. But the difference here at flyweight, we've already seen Pantoja basically fight everybody. He basically has a win over everybody outside of, I believe, Amir Albazi, that, could potentially be in line at some point in time, but he had the injury, he had to pull out of it, so there's been some different things. But nonetheless, the UFC, in my mind, is hoping that Steve can go in there and get this thing done. And this is also a slight on Muhammad Mokaev, because he went out there against Perez, and it was just an awful performance. There were several moments in that fight where I thought that Perez was going to be able to get Mokaev out of there. There were a few moments that I was like, this fight's about to be stopped, or a couple more shots and this fight's going to be stopped. And I can't help but think, does the UFC see what Erceg did and say, you know what? This guy has a better chance of beating Pantoja? Because if he does, imagine if Steve Erceg wins this belt at UFC 301, which I'm going to give him a shot. I think Steve Erceg can get this done. I think he has the much cleaner striking. He's got very technical boxing. We know about just the overall striking abilities of this guy. And we've seen when he gets taken down, he's very scrambly on the floor. He's hard to hold down. And he finds a way to snatch onto people's necks and submit people. So I do think that he can't be overlooked in this matchup. But I really think the UFC is hoping for Steve to win this fight. Because if he does, imagine the floodgates open to literally any fight is available now inside the flyweight division. And guys, the flyweight division over the past several years has been absolute trash. It has. And I will say that it did get a little bit more exciting when, we had, Figgy and Moreno, we had Cejudo, Mighty Mouse. We've had some moments, but overall, it's been a disaster. It's been a disaster. It's been nothing but recycled rematches, fights that people, maybe you're a fan of that guy and you don't mind seeing the same fight 4 times or 3 times. But nonetheless, the UFC is either seeing this as we're giving Pantoja essentially a free win, or in the back of their mind, they're like, we think Erceg possesses what it takes to go in there and take out a gritty, durable, well-rounded guy in Pantoja to where it's going to open up the floodgates to reviving this stale division that has just been absolutely abysmal for an extended period of time. Because when I look at Steve Erceg, if I was going to find a guy inside the rankings that can maybe cause some problems for Pantoja, it would be a guy like Steve Erceg. Because Pantoja, when you're that chaotic and you fight that just wild and just all over the place and gritty, and we've seen him slow down. He's a big guy in the weight class, and that's kind of been the issue with Pantoja, is he's been able to impose his will and impose his size on guys like we've saw him do to Brandon Moreno multiple times. We saw him do it to Brandon Royval, to where he's able to hold these guys down and control them, and he does have enough power in his hands to have you worried. But I think in a matchup with Steve Erceg, who I don't think he's that undersized for flyweight, right? Can you really be undersized for flyweight? I know Pantoja's a big flyweight. Erceg has confidence coming into this fight. He's got good power in his hands. I wouldn't put it past Steve Erceg to get this thing done. I think he definitely has the better hands. He definitely has the better boxing. He's very good at checking kicks. He has very good leg kick defense. He has some good leg kicks of his own. And if this fight hits the floor, from what I've seen, going back and kind of refreshing my memory a little bit before I made the video, I think this guy, he's scrambly enough on the ground to cause some problems for Pantoja. What really scares me is the fact that this is 5 rounds. And we've seen when this happens, the UFC is desperate inside the flyweight division. Because we got guys away, we have Ramadan going on, we have some different things to where, some of the other contenders maybe aren't available. So it then opened up the door for Steve Erceg. Coming off a KO win, they can market it, all these different things. But nonetheless, I absolutely think Steve Erceg has a chance. I think that his boxing is better. I think he has the submissions to maybe catch Pantoja in something. But outside of that, I can't help but think this is one of two things that the UFC is seeing this as, and I'm going to ask you all, if you watch this whole video, comment below which side of the fence you're on. Are you on the side of you just think that the UFC is feeding Pantoja a free win, or do you think Erceg is the guy that they believe could go in there and upset Pantoja to create a new revived flyweight division, so to speak? I want to hear from you all down in the comments. Like this video, subscribe to the channel if you have not already. I appreciate you all. See you next time.